How's it going?
Good, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to my humble abode.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you coming. So anyways, I know you're a financial advisor, so let's just go right into the background of what it was to do that. And then also you're independent, so you're out on your own. So just give some background on all that.
Yeah, so long story short on kind of how I got into this. So I had a unique upbringing. So parents were separated when I was very young and had two completely different experiences with how my parents approached money. My mom went out and worked 3-4 jobs to do whatever she could for me and my sister. My dad made a somewhat decent living, but liked to, go to the racetrack and that kind of thing. And so my dad passed away when I was 16, and seeing how much money he had made at various points of his life and seeing that he had nothing left, it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. And trust me, at the end of the day, I'd rather have my dad than $1 billion. So it's not about the money, but that was an eye-opening experience for me. And I always said, I don't want that to be the way that I manage my money for my kids, my loved ones, whatever the case is. And so I always had that kind of in the back of my mind. And then growing up, being the man of the house, kind of with my mom and my sister, my mom's working hard and she's doing whatever she can. And, whatever extra money she has, she goes to get advice. And she sold something, right? It's not necessarily the right thing for us. That's certainly not the best thing for her, but it's an easy way for an advisor to generate a commission and say that they did something for her. So, in hindsight, I always said I wanted to be that guy, but not that guy. So the guy that people go to when they need help and they're looking for answers, but not the guy who's just going to sell you something.
Sure.
So that's kind of the roundabout way how I got into this.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So financial advising can be people kind of use it as a dirty word almost.
It's very true.
for that same reason.
Very true, yeah.
I was going to say, is that part of what drove you to be independent with it?
Yeah, so on the independent side, and there's a couple of different ways that you can go about being independent. So you can go under a broker dealer kind of umbrella, if you will, and operate your own business, but under their umbrella. You're independent, but to a certain degree, and you're still a broker at the end of the day. There's a difference between being a broker and an advisor. So you can be an independent broker on your own, but that doesn't make you an advisor, right?
Sure.
So the independence for me is really about being a full-fledged advisor. So in the industry, we use the word fiduciary. So like having your best interests for the clients always, right? Legally bound to that standard. Only 3% of advisors actually have that standard. So there's a big misconception around what your advisor is actually doing for you and thinking we're all the same. So yes, to your point, everyone I meet, as soon as I say I'm a financial advisor, planner, whatever word I try to use, it's okay, how do I get away from this guy as soon as possible? But I am vastly different from, like I said, 97% of the advisors that are out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're a little bit more value oriented with this.
Yeah.
Especially given your background.
I mean, through the nature of the model as a fiduciary, you have to be value oriented because it's purely a relationship based model, right? Like I can't just wait for the next transaction to try to generate revenue. I have to be consistently adding value to my clients' lives in order for them to see the value in maintaining that relationship at the end of the day, right? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, by having that model.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that? Did you work for somebody at first and then branch out, or what was your story?
Yeah, so I graduated in the middle from college from Dominican University, actually
Oh, yeah, cool.
In 2008, and so right in the middle of the financial
Sure.
crisis, getting into finance was
Good
awesome.
timing.
But I happened to get a job at Chase, which is and probably still is the most reputable, largest bank in the world. Had multiple positions within the bank there. I was there for almost 7 years. Great experience, great people, but again, didn't want to be a salesperson at the end of the day. Nothing against anyone that is a broker. That doesn't make you a bad person, right?
Sure.
I'm still a good person when I was a broker. I'm just limited as far as what I can offer people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my wife and I were expecting our daughter 4 years ago, it made me take a step back and say, am I actually doing what I said I wanted to do? I'm doing the job that I love, but I am not playing the role that I really said I wanted to fulfill. So I left Chase and I went out to a small RIA out in Oak Brook. And I was there for about 4 years and just started to reevaluate where I was and where the business was going and things like that, and it prompted me to just look elsewhere. And I went the normal course of interviewing for other jobs, had multiple offers, and I really wasn't excited about any of them because everybody's just doing a lot of the same things.
Sure.
A lot of advisory firms are just focused on the multi-million-dollar accounts, which I get, right? I mean, a lot of my clients right now have a couple $20 and that's fine. But there's a lot of people out there that need help. And no one's really catering their services to have, options that fit different needs. And so I wanted to carve that out and say, if no one's going to do it, I'll build it myself. And so that's where we're at. So I'm about 5 months in and
All right.
doing well.
So
Yeah.
pretty fresh.
Yeah, pretty fresh. But honestly, I mean, it's been a humbling experience. The number of clients that I was working with who came on board very willingly and just, really demonstrated the trust that they had in me and appreciated my, the things that I've done for them over the years was very humbling. So, I feel like we've definitely made good steps in this first 5 months, but we're obviously able to do a lot more.
Okay, so a lot of this is based on relationships then, which
For
is interesting to me because that's something that I'm gathering more and more. I mean, I'm a little bit fresher in my career, but like creating this like goal and gratitude journal is what I've been working on. And the gratitude part is when you share something, usually people are more likely to help you again because you're bringing them into your story. So
Exactly.
that's interesting. So let's talk about relationship building and stuff.
Yeah.
How did that work in your favor?
Yeah, so I would say I've always had this natural want and desire to help people. Seeing my mom was a model of it. Even though she was working 3 or 4 jobs, she would always go out of her way to give whatever she could to somebody, who was on the streets or, going through our stuff and say, hey, we don't need this anymore. Let's go help this person. And so, I feel like, as corny as it may sound, my gift is understanding financial concepts and being able to explain them in ways that the everyday person can understand without using jargon. Because what value is it if you can't understand what I'm telling you, right? And I think people genuinely feel that I want to help them, and that what you see is what you get. I'm a genuine guy. I'm an authentic guy. I don't take myself too seriously, but I take what I do very seriously. And I think that comes through in pretty much everybody I meet. I mean, I hear that pretty often. And I think that's something that people appreciate, and that helps me, build rapport, trust with the people that I work with. But then obviously that helps them feel comfortable and confident to, share my name with others and establish those relationships.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you're a pretty authentic guy just from the last 20 minutes. So I guess that's a good.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So let's see. So let's talk about. So you said you've been doing this for like 5 months now out on your own.
Yeah.
So what were some of the barriers of entry to that, or some of the big like, oh shoot moments?
Yeah. That's probably the better one. I'd say the biggest concern that I had when I actually started to think about going off on my own and not going under anybody else's umbrella, it's going to cost more, both in money and time, to make sure that you're building the infrastructure from the ground up. And so, if I'm asking people, whether it was existing clients or new people, to kind of take this journey with me, right, with us as we kind of grow our firm, I needed to make sure that it was going to be an offering that I would, quote unquote, have my mom in, right? That's what everybody asks,
Yeah.
like, is this something you would put your mom in? And something that I would want to get behind. So the first thing is I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to put my clients at an immediate disadvantage by being a small new shop, right? And once I was able to say no, like no one's at any disadvantage, and at the end of the day, there's actually no different risks for working with me versus, a JP Morgan, a Morgan Stanley, whatever the case is, just as a pure individual client level. And then just, compliance issues, it was one thing to get the business set up as whatever structure, LLC, S Corp, whatever, but then having it registered as an actual investment advisory firm, that was a process. There's all these different documents that need to be in place. You need to go through the process with the state to have it all registered.
Good. I mean, I'm glad that's a
Yeah,
hard
no,
process.
absolutely. And I was actually encouraged. As I'm going through it, I was like, okay, again, we need to adjust this, but hey, this is good. At the end of the day, they're out there to protect the consumer, so I could never be mad about that. But obviously, attorney costs come into play and things like that. But I have to say, the biggest biggest obstacle is and will probably always be the stigma applied to being a financial advisor. And I'd say the biggest obstacle is there's usually one of two perceptions. The dirty word, right? Financial advisor, people are like, okay, another salesperson, right? So people think we're all the same in that sense. Or people think we're all the same in that we all have your best interest in mind. So both of those are wrong, right? Only 3% of us are actually out to do what's in your best interest and don't sell anything. But it's really hard to get people to listen when they have both of those impressions. You're no different from my person, whether it's because I see you as another salesperson, or because you're all held to the same duty.
Sure.
Yeah.
So trying to differentiate yourself.
Yeah.
It's kind of the big barrier.
And without using jargon, right? The whole fiduciary word, it means something and people understand it, but it just sounds like, all right, that's not a normal word for people to say.
Sure.
So it's another way trying to find another way to articulate the difference without sounding stodgy.
Yeah, and now you can't stand behind like a name that people already trust. Like when
It's
you're
true.
talking about Chase,
Yeah.
when you work with them, people already have that connection.
Absolutely.
They know, and then they're probably more willing to trust you just from the onset, like that immediate impression.
Right. Yes.
So you have to reset kind
Yes.
of that in a big way.
Brand recognition is obviously a big part of it. Whether people like to admit it or not, there's a certain trust that people feel when you have a brand behind you. So yeah, I mean, and that's why this process has been very humbling for people to come on board with us, because we're 5 months in, right?
Sure.
Like we don't have that brand recognition. People are essentially investing as us and just people, and they trust us, and that's something I'll obviously never take for granted. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see people standing behind you.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say, so obviously you were talking about attorney fees and setup fees and all this. So there is some actual money investment
For
into starting it out on your own. But what was your, if you have one, what was your moment where you were all in, where you realized like, okay, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, well, so I think about that very often actually, and it was really the first check I had to cut to formally get the business in place and registered as the RIA. Because once you cut that check for the deposit, there's really no going back. I mean, you can go back, but what's the point at the end of the day, right? It's sunk cost. You've obviously done your due diligence and your research to make the decision to go full-fledged into it. Now you're just actually really making it happen. So there's obviously a lot of emotions tied to that because it's very real at that point. But that was cutting that first check and handing it over. That was the moment where it was like, all right, this is it.
Yeah. That's what I've been finding with these talks and stuff. There's usually a moment where people are like, and a lot of times it's money, which is funny that influences us so much. But a lot of times there's that one thing you're like, okay, it's easier for me to just keep blazing forward than it is for me to back out of it at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there's.
Well, in non-monetary or non-financial wise, I'd say it became very real when I started to tell more people than just my wife, right? Like my wife is my backbone. She's the bedrock of our family. Obviously, I'll tell her everything that I'm thinking, and even sharing with her that it was something that I wanted to pursue and for us to pursue, because this is very much like, I can't do this without her, right? So it's us doing this as a family unit, but starting to tell other family members, friends, casual acquaintances. It's like, yeah, this isn't a concept anymore. This is real.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting too. These are kind of all the concepts in my head, and then so part of this journal thing that I was making too is to write out what you want to do, because there is a psychology behind when you put it out there into the world somewhere, outside of your mind, outside of your closest connections. When you just write it down and put it out there, then you're more likely to act.
Very true. Very true. Yeah,
That's interesting.
And whether it's because, like, I've had some people go through an experience of starting their own business or starting a project, whatever the case is, where they put it out there, and even if it's out of fear of people saying, like, oh, you're not going to do it, and you need that motivation to prove people wrong, or it's just that innate, like, hey, I put this out there, it's very real, and it's something I need to move forward on. Either one of those approaches is not wrong, but whatever your motivation is, make it happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what are some of your big fears in shifting out on your own, and how do you overcome those to keep going every day?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I really don't get caught up in the fears. There are going to be times where I get in front of a group of people or a person and something doesn't come out right, or I'm not using, the whole fiduciary word. I'm still trying to get past the fiduciary word and how to really differentiate myself without sounding stodgy. At the end of the day, we're all going to make mistakes. And I'm a big believer that through those mistakes, failures, whatever you want to call them, those are just opportunities to fine tune your craft and to learn and to kind of sharpen your sword, if you will. So I don't really get caught up in those things. And, in talking through, the process with my wife and others, it's like, how are you going to grow your business? How are you going to get your work, your name and your brand out there? And, my biggest thing is, you can post on social and you can pay for ads, whatever the case is. The only thing that I can control at the end of the day is what I'm doing for the people that have already, put their trust in me to help them with their financial lives, right? And I've set out to always do what's best for my clients, add the most value to my clients. If I'm always doing right by them, the rest of it will take care of itself. And I have full faith in that.
Sure. Yeah. So it's kind of, there's something about entrepreneurial people. There's something mentally wrong where like you don't see risk as like fear and oh no I can't do it thing. You see it as something to be accomplished, like something to learn from, grow from. And that's like a continuing variable through all these conversations that I'm having. So,
well, and maybe you've seen this too. Like I've within myself, I found this need for accountability, right? Like to whatever degree of success, we achieve through this business, it's all on me, right? And there's no one else I can point the finger at. It's all, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. It's all on me. Yeah. So some people shy away from that and that scares them. Some people go 100 miles an hour at that. And I feel like I'm the latter.
See, that's interesting because, you use the word accountability where other people have used the word ownership.
Yeah.
But ownership is almost more positive, like I get to take ownership of these things. But the flip side of that coin is you also are accountable for all of your
100%. And that's why I like, yes, ownership, accountability, or you could argue are the same, but to your point, ownership sounds like someone who just wants control, right? Versus if something goes wrong, it's all on you. If something goes right, it's all on you. You're going to get the blame and the glory, and you have to be comfortable with that. As I said, as I was going into this process, I knew I wasn't going to account for everything. It's just not realistic. But what you want to do whenever you're going into any venture is you want to make sure that you try to account for the things that could completely derail you and make you non-existent the next day, right? The other things you can address, you can learn from, you can stumble your way through them if you will, but as long as they're not, mission critical, as I like to say, you'll live to fight another day.
So know your key variables and understand that.
Yeah.
But then knowing that everything is gonna go to crap as soon as it.
No, and know that you have to be comfortable with before you actually go live. Like I had this idea in mind that once I went live, it was gonna look like this, right? You go live and you have to be comfortable with it not looking anything like that, or things are going to be shifted, or you have to adapt. If you don't adapt, you're not going to exist. So that's so just being open to adaptability, change. I guess as we're talking through this, accountability is a big thing. Openness to change, with most people are not comfortable with either of those two things. I think you need to embrace those as an entrepreneur, as a business person.
Awesome. So for somebody like me who's young and just coming out of college and everything, I don't have a lot of money in my bank account, but knowing that this is something I wanted to do, you have to make that investment anyways. So what do you say to the people, the young entrepreneurial type people who have these ideas, but maybe are still dealing with things like student loans or just getting out into the world and your first mortgage, first kid, first
lots, right? So what's unique about when you graduate from college, whether you're going to go your traditional employee path or starting your own business, there are a lot of firsts, right? So for a lot of people, you're buying a car for the first time, you're renting or buying a place for the first time, you're starting a family, whether that be just getting married or having kids. And so there's a lot of crucial things that kind of fall into your lap within the first 3 to 7 years shortly after college that you have to plan around. So for people coming out of college, I would say the first thing you have to do is you got to give yourself a cash cushion. Because if you want to, especially if you want to start your own business, you still have those obligations, financial obligations, right? So you still have your student loan payments, you still have your rent payments, wherever those might be. Even if you're living at home, you still have stuff you have to pay for. If you're going to go the path of starting your own business, I would tell you to have at least a year's worth of your expenses, right? Your normal living lifestyle needs in cash. Okay. Now, cash, obviously, if you're in a traditional bank account, you're not going to get paid much. I'm personally a big fan of online high yield savings accounts.
Sure.
So and I don't
Marcus.
Yeah, exactly. So Marcus is one, Ally, Synchrony. We don't get paid to promote any of those. Do your research, figure out which one is right for you. But at least in those accounts, you're going to get like 2+% versus fractions of 1% in your traditional banks. So I'd say regardless of your situation, what it is you want to do, you got to have a cash cushion behind you because life happens, as we like to say, and you don't want to be resorting to more debt, especially credit card debt, right? So get that cash cushion behind you.
Especially if you go into something and you're really passionate about it, but the reality is businesses fail, like it happens. So
Absolutely.
you want to be able to protect yourself versus for your better iteration of that project, for your next business
Absolutely.
idea and stuff. So
Yeah.
you don't want to be completely broke at the
No. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, it's going to cost me $5,000 to start my business, and I have $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, you have the money to start your business, but do you really have the money to start your business and not make any money or afford it to go, bankrupt tomorrow?
Yeah.
So you want to give yourself that flexibility to be all in on your business, and you can only do that if you have some cash behind you to weather the storms a little bit. Yeah.
One of the big risks or fears of starting a business too is that not having any savings behind you.
Yeah.
So without that fallback, it could potentially keep you from really fully investing in yourself. And
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you need to be psychologically invested as much as you are hands-on invested. And so if you're always worried about money, number one, you're not going to be solely focused on your business, but then number two, you start to press, right? You get outside of what you really want to do, and maybe the product isn't what you really want to put forward. You start to sacrifice in ways that you don't really mean to, and then you're not putting forth the best product either.
Yeah.
So
that's been the major value of still having a job while I try to do some stuff like this. It's okay to let yourself get started in something before you should be able to make your income back plus 20% or something so that you can cover insurance and taxes and all this stuff.
Absolutely.
Before you should consider dropping your job, dropping your source of income.
Yeah.
Because I think that psychological and emotional fear in the background of not having any money can motivate some people, but for others can be the thing that ruins your business.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So,
Yeah. And I guess as far as like the student loan piece too, like I'd say to what I consider, so people like to say millennials, that's a pretty broad category, but I would say for emerging professionals, right? Don't sacrifice your long-term goals for your short-term needs. So like a lot of people get caught up in the fact that I have these student loans, I need to pay them off as soon as possible because emotionally you feel this burden. So they're not contributing to their 401ks, which means they're not getting the company match within those plans. Those dollars aren't growing for as long as they possibly can be, right? And so the most valuable asset anybody has is time. And when you just graduate, you just get out into the workforce, you have the most valuable asset of anybody out there. You have about 40 years to let that money work for you. You got to reevaluate how do you go about paying down your debts without sacrificing those long-term savings opportunities.
sure. Your time is a depreciating asset. just gonna
That's a great way to put it.
Just gonna keep just gonna keep losing.
It's finite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So every year that you're delaying, those long-term retirement savings opportunities, whatever the case is, it's a year you can't make up, right? And what I see far too often is people delay for 5-10 years. And the only way you can make up for lost time is by just saving more, right? And we all say it's hard enough to save as it is, and now you need to save X percent more. Well, so the sooner you start, the more flexibility you have within your budget, and the more that money's going to be worth, 4 years from now.
Sure. I often think about like this little venture thing that I'm doing as an investment. And I'm curious how my cost is going to end up profiting in the future. Like these are all things. That's how I'm also in finance. That's how I think.
For sure.
So I guess you can also do that with your career or with your entrepreneurial ventures or businesses or whatever, it's part of your diversification.
Absolutely.
If you have funds somewhere else in the stock market, but also you're devoting funds to your business, then you need to view it as an investment.
Yeah.
So,
Look, some people say, you know, on the entrepreneurship route, some people think being an entrepreneur, a business starter, business owner is more risky than being an employee. I can tell you firsthand, that's not true. Regardless of the size of your company, you are dispensable. And regardless of how good you are at what you do, you are dispensable. And to always be subject to, you know, a corporate hierarchy who can determine one day to the next whether or not you're needed, or if they need to cut costs, and you're either the low person, the newest person in, and you're the easiest person to get rid of, or you're the most expensive person and you're going to give them the most cost savings. There's really no safe place to be. And so I would say, you know, being a business owner, an entrepreneur, in my mind, isn't any more risky than being an employee, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's something people are looking at in 2019, you know, expecting when the market's going to drop and maybe like planning layoffs ahead of time to smooth that out. So that's interesting, because if you do work for yourself, you're not going to lay yourself off. So yeah, good point.
Absolutely. You're just going to work harder, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to grind.
Okay, so let's see. What are some final takeaways that you're gaining from this process? Maybe what if you could say one thing to the people who are watching this, what would you say?
You know, I would say you have to find your support system. There are going to be people that kind of laugh in your face, regardless of whatever your project is, whatever your passion is that you're going to go after. And if you don't at least have one person who supports you and says, yeah, okay, let it roll off your back, we're going at this, whatever the case is, it makes it hard. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go through with it, but at least having the one person who's got your back, who knows you, who knows your work ethic, that knows you're going to give it everything you can, who knows you can be successful, and kind of helps you remember that every day, it goes so far. And even family, you know, family may not laugh in your face, they might be concerned, right? It comes from a good place, like, what do you mean you're quitting your job? What do you mean you're not going to have health insurance? What are you going to do? All those things come, like, it comes from a good place, but it's that fear is not, it's holding you back from something that could be potentially monumental if you just kind of stick your head down and run at it.
Sure.
So I would say support, whether it be an internal support that you find, or, you know, another person that you can find it. And I guess it goes, you know, not to kind of rehash these things, but accountability and change. I mean, whether it's a new business or, I mean, look at any industry right now. Amazon's a great example, right? So Amazon is forcing your average retailer to adapt, right? They have to evolve. If they don't, it's a matter of when they go belly up, right?
Sure.
And so you have to go into things knowing that it's going to change day to day. What you need to be doing day to day should probably change. As your business grows, like the things that you were doing when you were by yourself, you probably don't need to be doing anymore. You can probably find somebody else to do that, because either you're not good enough at it, or you need to be doing more important things.
Sure.
And so just being open and willing to change, both personally, but your business as well. Yeah.
So Frank, if any of these viewers wanted to get in hold with you, how would they do that?
So you can go to our website, www.fmifinancial.com. You'll get a whole source of information that's out there. And I think the biggest thing that we'd like you to see from the website is the different services that we offer depending on your needs as your life continues to evolve. So not only are we one of the few advisors that don't sell anything, whether it be investment, insurance related, what have you, we are also one of the very few that offer hourly consults. So we'll always do a free initial consultation, see what's on your mind, how we might be able to help you. But for most advisors, you got to hand them the keys to your entire financial life and hope that it's the right partnership. For us, we'll do that hourly consultation service, kind of let you kick the tires a little bit and make sure that it's the right fit for us and you, and then we can let the relationship kind of evolve from there. So that's one of the biggest takeaways from the website. The other on the website is the tools that we give to all of our ongoing clients. So we have web and app-based tools that allow you to see all of your accounts in one place, whether it's investments, checking account, credit cards, insurance, 529 plans, whatever it is, all in one place. It also has an interactive budgeting tool that allows you to see how much you're spending, but more importantly, where that money is actually going. A lot of people say, I don't know where my money goes every month, but that'll at least help you. There's also a vault where you can store all of your secure documents. So like me as an advisor to my clients, they can store tax returns, they can store their estate plans. And so if I need to look at the tax returns, I can do that without sending them via email. If something were to happen to somebody, I have access to their estate plan and can help the next generation kind of see through that process. And then you can obviously call or email us from the website, from the information on the website too.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So it sounds like you got a pretty good setup going there. So I'll be sure to list the link in the description and all that jazz. Link in bio and all that.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. Frank, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for your time.
No, I really appreciate the time.